Insured Nomads proudly supports the new Nomad podcast. Insured Nomads for the evolution of insurance, for the revolution of travel. For all your travel, medical, and support needs, please visit our website at insurednomads.com. We support our location-independent community worldwide.
Welcome to the new Nomad podcast, hosted by Allen and Andrew of Insured Nomads. Join us as Allen and Andrew interview and explore the community of people and ideas that embody the nomadic spirit. Tune in to incredible discussions with thought leaders each week that will help you take full advantage of the cross-border remote work lifestyle. Now here are your hosts.
Welcome, and thanks for joining us at the new Nomad podcast, the podcast that tries to give you the confidence, the intelligence, the information that you need to visit the world in a safe and exciting way. Today, I have a great guest. Tony Carne of Airguides is joining me. Tony's been many places. We were having a great conversation before the podcast started about many of the different places he's been. He also works with world-class storytellers, great content. So we're going to have a freewheeling conversation. Tony, thank you for joining me today. I know that you're in Melbourne. We were talking a little bit of tennis beforehand, but before we get into that, tell people a little bit about your travels, because you've been traveling your whole life, and this is an inspiration to our listeners.
Brilliant. Yeah, great to be with you, Alan, and thanks everyone else for joining along and listening in. Yeah, as you said, I'm not a new nomad. I'm an old nomad for sure. I've been traveling, since I left high school, essentially. University dropout, which is probably not the thing that I'm most proud of. But what I did discover early enough in my life was that the passion I had, the thing that motivated me most, was travel and experiencing the world. And so as soon as I could, I left Australia and spent essentially my entire 20s working and traveling. Did a lot of that out in the UK, lived out there for 4 years and traveled through Central America for a year on the way home from the UK. And then when I got back to Australia, traveled around Australia for close on 18 months, selling hammocks, funnily enough, that I picked up out in the Central America. Essentially my life was all about get any job. Didn't really matter what the job was. It was generally in hospitality, which is a great breeding ground. Hospitality and tourism should all be about being hospitable to your guests, etc. So it was a great breeding ground for that. And I'd worked those jobs for a year and have a pretty low key life for that year, and then save as much money as I can and head off again. And I just did that year on year out right through to my early 30s. And then I was actually, when I was traveling around Australia, I had a combi van. I'm a bit of a cliche, really, and I was picking up backpackers to share the experience with, share the cost and whatever. And I was actually born in a place called Alice Springs, which is, if you don't know, right in the very centre of Australia, close to the middle of nowhere as you could possibly ever get. And I was driving into that town and went to visit some old family friends of mine. And they said, "What are you up to?" And I told them, I'm driving around and picking up backpackers and having a gregreat time. And they said, "Oh, that's a job here." I said, "Oh, is it?" And said, yeah. You should go over and see this crew called Adventure Tours Australia. They take backpackers out to Ayers Rock, Uluru as we know it, and out into the outback on camping adventures. So I took their advice and did that, and finally found myself a job in travel, having been traveling for so long, which I guess was maybe inevitable, but also just one of those sliding door moments that it was a stroke of luck that really changed my life from then on.
Are you unique in the Australian mindset? Because when I've traveled, I've always run into Australians. They're always wonderful to travel with. They're really engaging. I also enjoy beer, so I usually have something in common with them on that. Do most Australians take time to travel like this, or are you unique? Because I've run into great people all over the place. I'm not quite sure if that's unique or not.
So in my generation, it definitely wasn't. Say probably half of my peer group went somewhere, because we're a long way away and we have relationships being part of the Commonwealth, for example, where we have an opportunity when we're under 31 to go and work in London. Lots of people take that opportunity. Sure. And the reason's not so much to live in the UK per se, but it's the fact that the UK is so close to Europe, and you go over and spend a year. A lot of people do it post-university, kind of their first job out of university. They'll go over and get a job, a kind of a grounding job in their field. And but take that year and spend those weekends, jumping on a train and heading over to Paris, or flying over to Turkey for 4 days, or whatever it happens to be, to experience as much as the world as they can. But also, I know there's a whole other demographic that go to the States, not so easy to work, and they probably do that as a leisure thing. But people, like I said, they'll save up, basically their whole university career or their early career, and then say, "All right, I'm going to take all this money and head off for a year and see where it takes me." And that's quite a common experience these days. I'm not 100% sure. Like a lot of those things still
Yeah.
exist, and but we'll see what happens. The world's changing, which is kind of what the new Nomad's all about, and what I see the future being. I've got an 11-year-old daughter. I'm so excited for her, that for someone like me. Not that I had many career aspirations when I was young, but if I did, I would have had to make that choice between career or travel. And the future, my daughter's future is she won't have to make that choice. She can choose her career and go travel and live where she wants to, have experiences with other cultures, but still build her career, and do those things asymmetrically without having to, compromise, which is, it's so exciting. It's so exciting for that new generation coming through.
Well, I think you and I are pretty much of the same generation. I mean, I remember those days of traveling when you didn't have a phone. You really didn't have a security blanket. You didn't have a translation tool. You had traveler's checks, and you just, you hope to get through. I completely agree with you. I think one of the things that's come through loud and clear, right, is technology has really given us a great opportunity to experience travel differently. And what I thought was really cool about Airguides, that also now we have an opportunity to have a more, I would say, sustainable and focused and unique travel experience. So I'd love to hear about your ideas. I'm certainly your previous travel has helped inform you on Airguides and what you're working on today.
100% it has. And look, Airguide was founded back in 2017 by a great couple, Vivi and Paul, very similar to me. They just love their travel, and they get out there and do it type people. But that they engaged in their travels around 2017, 2016 with a lot of people that were, I guess, the original digital nomads.
Sure.
And these were creative people, so writers, photographers, videographers, these type of people. And I guess what they realised was that these people had spent a lot of time developing their skills, but they weren't being viewed as professionals when they went to offer their work to others. And Paul and Bibi thought that wasn't fair, and so they wanted to create a platform that changed that mindset, so that those that wanted to engage in the travel industry, which requires great imagery to sell it,
sure,
requires engaging video, it requires great stories to operate and to get customers. So why isn't that appreciated in the industry? And they wanted to change that, so they created a platform where they would create trips based on the experiences of what we call storytellers, and that's now branched out into chefs and professional athletes and all sorts of people that have got a connection with another place through their work or their skills or whatever, and have something to offer and teach people who want to get involved in passion travel. So, I mean, the original idea of Airguides was all about helping digital nomads to make a full-time professional career out of the travel industry. And to give you an example that I guess we're really proud of is we work with some incredible people, that amazing photographers, and they're first and foremost artists, I guess. And like any artist, life's a struggle for them. But working with us, got a great guy by the name of Mark Fritz who works with us, and working with us, doing 4 tours with us a year, and bringing his audience along on those tours earns him enough money for him to be able to spend the rest of the year concentrating on his art. And to us, that's like just the ultimate in success. He gets paid a professional wage for the quality of work that he does, and it allows him to continue to work on his art. And that's what we're all about, essentially. He's got a massive following. People want to come and travel with him. People want to learn from his skills in photography. So he's adding benefit to the travellers, and he gets to go to fantastic places to do that. So we do it in places like the Great Barrier Reef here in Australia, where you can just see, basically the ultimate in underwater marine life, and that's what he brings to those customers. So it's super exciting, and that's what we're all about, facilitating digital storytellers to tell their stories and make an earn out of it.
Curated travel. It makes so much sense because, first off, you really get to the meat of the matter. What I also think is great is if we can get more people moving away from buying each other like gifts that are like physical of nature, like here's your new suit or here's something, and have more of these experiences, right? I think we probably will have a better world. And I think you've had some thoughts on how travel leads to a greater understanding and empathy. I'd love your perspective on, as somebody who's been traveling a long time, I find if I had $1 trillion, I know I would need a ton of money for this. I would love to be able to say to everybody, every person on the planet has to travel at least for 3 months to a different country just to see humanity, and that things can often be done a different way and still be okay. Your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, get out of your comfort zone. Like, travel should be a growth thing. It should be a learning thing. But, one of the first jobs I had in travel, I joined a business called Intrepid Travel, and to be fair, I didn't know a lot about them when I first joined, but I'd been doing the tour guiding work out in Central Australia, and I worked my way through that and didn't want to go back there again. And so, I had this opportunity to do something with Intrepid, and I went through their training, which is quite rigorous, because you're leading groups of your fellow citizens out in potentially iffy places, and so they want to make sure you're across the details of safety and security, and that you're a good person in yourself. And I'd just come back from South America, and I looked on their website, and they had South America on their website. I thought, I'm just going to turn around and go straight back there, you beauty. I can't wait. The Spanish was flying. I thought, this is going to be great. I did the training and everything, and they said, we'd love to have you on board. And I'm like, beautiful. Okay, where are we off to? Quito, Caracas, Buenos Aires. I'm ready. Let's go. And they said, you're off to Cairo. And Cairo. Okay, Cairo in Egypt, Cairo. So I had been to Egypt. Probably wasn't number one in my favourite travel experiences, but I was so invested in this process by that point. I'm like, sure, let's go. And for me, going out to Egypt, again, sliding doors moment, or a twist of luck, or whatever you want to call it, was just an incredible and life-changing experience for me. And, we're talking 2002, I was out there. The sentiment, towards the Muslim world wasn't overly great, post 9/11 and all those kind of hangovers still happening. And my job was to get people to love Egypt. So I would have groups of foreigners, 12 people arrive, with all their ingrained biases and their natural reservations and their somewhat fear of what might be ahead. And I had 15 days to turn them around into absolute passionate advocates of the people and this place. And so that's what I saw my job as. And the beauty of the way that Intrepid Travel works is, of course, we see the sights, but we do spend a lot of time meeting people. My job out there was to facilitate those relationships, those conversations. And we'd go into people's houses and have meals. We'd stay over at locals' houses. Sure. We kind of tried to build that experience you might have out backpacking as best we could, in a small group. And my favourite experiences were always when guests going away going, we love Egypt. We are so happy we came on this trip. And they would have got the email addresses back in the day of some of the locals, and they're still conversing to this day. And I guess one kind of example that really bears it out, we used to go out to a place called Siwa, which is out in the Western Desert, out near the Libyan border. I call it time travel. You go to Siwa, you are literally landing 100 years ago. The main form of transport is donkey carts. It's quite a conservative place. The women are covered as they travel the streets, etc. And we go, as I said, to someone's house for dinner, and the women would come in and serve the entire group in a room. The men would eat with us, but the women wouldn't, and that's just the way it was. But after dinner, the women from our group were invited out to the kitchen to the dishes, and 3 hours of non-stop laughter reigned from that kitchen. And I'm jealous because I wasn't there. I didn't get to experience it. I wasn't allowed out there. But talking to the ladies afterwards, they said, they'd seen the ladies come in kind of all covered and whatever and drop the food down. When they went out the kitchen, there's all these beautiful ladies uncovered, just having a good time. And they spent 3 hours out there doing the dishes, just, having an absolute ball with each other, even though they couldn't really communicate from a language point of view, just got through. And our group ladies didn't want to leave. And I'm to this day, I'm sure, when people ask those ladies about their travel experiences, that's the travel experience they talk about, going out into the kitchen to do the dishes with another bunch of ladies. And to me, that's the transformational power of travel. That's what it's all about.
It really resonates with me because the places that I've been most uncomfortable about going to, I've had the greatest experiences. And you mentioned Egypt. I mean, I've been to Egypt, had a great experience, but I remember the time I went to Jordan and ambled outside of my hotel, outside of the bubble, so to speak, to go get a haircut. And here I am in the middle of Amman, guy with a straight edge razor, cutting my hair. I can't speak Arabic. He can't speak English. We're pointing, I'm getting that thick coffee. And it was one of the best haircuts I had. And I kept back to the hotel, and one of my co-travelers who was afraid to go sees my haircut. Is like, that's tremendous. Can you bring me there? So I took him back, and it was such to the barber, it was such they almost had tears in their eyes that I felt enough of the haircut that I pantomimed that I loved the haircut so much. My friend did. He wanted to come back. And while they were my friend was getting a haircut, This guy goes to the back room, comes out with a book of American movie stars. And the book must have been from the 50s and the 60s because kind of like history ended at Humphrey Bogart and Rock Hudson. He's just pointing, saying, good. And it's those type of real experiences, right, Tony, that you get into. And I'd love you to comment on the places that maybe you were the most uncomfortable, but you had a great experience. I mean, obviously you told about Egypt, but I'd love to hear some of your tales on that.
For sure. I guess my formative trip was through Central America, and you talked earlier about the transformation in technology and how information's just at our fingertips. Like when I went, I had some mates who went the year before, and I tore a bit of paper out of a foolscap book, and I said, just can you write me down some things that you think I should check out when I'm down there? They wrote 3 things on this bit of paper. That was my research into arriving into Mexico, and I left England in January. It was freezing cold. We arrived in Mexico City. The weather was beautiful. We had no idea. We didn't speak Spanish. We were like, well, bloody hopeless, really. And within a couple of days, we're like, well, let's just get to the beach. And we're like, well, what's the beach? And I said, well, I remember back in when I was about 7 or 8, I used to watch a show called The Love Boat.
Yeah.
And they used to always finish in Acapulco.
Yes.
I said, where's Acapulco? Let's go there.
Yeah.
And so we headed out to Acapulco, caught a bus out there, and look, within we paid for our first night of accommodation in a hotel, and then went down to the beach and got some beers out of the convenience store and sat on the beach, and a bunch of Mexican guys came down to us and looked pretty sketchy, to be completely honest. They were kind of a bunch of toughs basically that came and sat next to us, and we had beers and they had beers, and they were having trouble opening their beers. And again, these kind of pivotal moments in your life. Yeah. The door, the key was attached to a bottle opener for our hotel. Yeah. So we went over and just opened up their beers for them, and that was it. It was suddenly we're best mates.
That's awesome.
During the conversation, these guys said to us, where you're staying, stuff here, and we said, how much is it? And they said, I can't remember, it was $30 a night or something, and they said, there's an apartment next to us that's available for $50 a month. We're like, $50 a month? Yeah. Wow, this is awesome. Yeah. Let's go up and have a look. And literally we moved in the next day and lived, in this apartment block with all these guys. We lived in this apartment block with all these guys for the next month. And it actually changed the way we traveled. So from then on, we knew we could go places and rent a house for a month. And to me, that's, like you said earlier, it's about that kind of immersion into places. So we just rent a place for a month. It was always $50. Eons before Airbnb, etc. And really got to know the community and embed ourselves in there. And by the end of it, we could speak Spanish, thank God.
It's classic those are the type of experiences when you get out of the bubble. In the U.S., we always say, let's get out of the bubble. You really get an understanding. Also, the other thing we try to do is, I always assume positive intent. Even if it's a scary looking group, I'm going to assume positive intent until that moment that I might have to run for it, which doesn't happen very often, right? Most of the time, people are very good on things. And I think the amount of empathy that grows. You in Egypt, you had the same epiphany many of us are now having, is that we should be eating less meat. We should be eating more vegetable-related foods. I'd love you to share with our audience your thoughts on that, as many of our people are very much into health and sustaining the environment, etc. I couldn't agree with you more. I'd love you to share.
For sure, yeah. So it's kind of a multifaceted story, I guess. My wife was a lifelong vegetarian, so she's kind of really was the pinnacle behind my awareness of it. And in Egypt's not is not a vegetarian country. Yeah. It's a country where people don't have a lot of money, and therefore the daily staples of what you eat in Egypt are all vegetarian. So, falafel, deep fried cauliflower, or, lentil soup, or whatever it happens to be. Koshari is a big kind of pasta dish that they have over there. These are all the staples of daily life, and they're all vegetarian. The majority of the population will eat meat, but they'll do it during the feast periods. So during the end of Ramadan and that kind of stuff is when you eat your meat. So what they've developed is this culture of just incredibly tasty, delicious, Moorish, beautiful food. And I worked for 17 years for Intrepid, doing a few different things there. And then obviously the pandemic came along and travel stopped, and I took that opportunity to basically take a redundancy. And so I had some money, and what I really wanted to do next in my career was do something that was positive for the environment.
Yep.
As I said before, I've got an 11-year-old daughter. The world's in a bit of a mess at the moment, and when she's kind of, starts questioning, what did you actually do to help, through those tough times when the world was in a bit of a crisis, I wanted to have a positive answer.
Yeah.
So, I took my redundancy money and I started an Egyptian street food shop, 250 metres from where I'm sitting now, to give the community here where I live, in a suburb of Melbourne, the opportunity for when they're making a takeaway choice to come and have a fully vegetarian takeaway choice, but not one that you need to compromise on, one that was, delicious and beautiful and tasty and that you wanted to come back to over and over again. And so, that was kind of my motivation for starting that business and kind of going back to hospitality where I started in the beginning. And just wanted to, do something that followed a passion that was tangentially related to travel, but I also have a love of food and cooking, and I wanted to scratch that itch. So, I got into it absolutely, and no regrets there.
Isn't it amazing? One of the things about travel, we always talk about meeting interesting people, but interesting foods. It's just one of the great, even the base. I mean, I think about, you mentioned Egypt earlier. I remember when I was in Egypt, the hummus was not like the hummus I get here in Delaware. Or you go to Italy and the mozzarella is not like the mozzarella you get here. And it's really an incredible experience, isn't it? Some of the different foods you come across, or you see how people use food differently.
And that's part of, it's a big part of, that learning that things are done differently in different places, and you have an opportunity to do something with that knowledge. You might come back to your hometown and then go search out a little deli that's run by an Italian family that, has made the effort to either recreate, that mozzarella locally or import it from Italy itself or whatever. That's how people change their habits, and, that knowledge transfer, helps support those small businesses, and everything about it is good. And particularly the empathy and understanding that you develop by, engaging with other people who are, who are different from you, and everybody's got something to teach somebody else. You just got to be open to learning it. That's the way I've always looked at life, and I'm always there waiting to see what it is that the person that I'm meeting next has to teach me, and hopefully they're getting something from me as well, and we both walk away winners.
Well, it makes me really think of, I went to Vietnam a couple of years back and had pho. I never even knew what it was, and now I'm back in Delaware on a cold day. Let's find that Vietnamese restaurant, and you have a great understanding from it. It also takes you back to that trip, which is wonderful. Which leads me to a time in our podcast that we ask people who has traveled as you, as learned as you on things, is to share maybe an overlooked person, place, experience that some of our intrepid travelers out there, or even less intrepid travelers, may overlook. So I would love to get, some of your ideas on overlooked.
For sure. Yeah. Look, I guess to wind it into the whole remote experience, there's a guy called Sam Keller who's doing an amazing thing called Working Without Borders. So he's deep into the remote scene. And, as I said, I'm a father of an 11-year-old. And what Sam's doing is he's creating experiences that help families trial remote living. So essentially he'll build an experience that is suitable both from a working environment, great internet, a proper place to work for the day, but also experiences for your kids who essentially you're taking out of school to go and have this month, but so that they are continuing to learn, but learn in a different way than they would if they were just sitting in their class at school. And what the experience does is those families an opportunity to understand this is the life for them. They might be weighing up, should we just rent the house out and hit the road, which is a scary thing to do. Like, even, I'm well traveled, but, I have that fear for myself and, my daughter's education and that kind of stuff. It's normal and natural to have those. And, what Sam does is help people to go and trial it, and do it in a safe way. And you can go away and you come back and evaluate that month and decide, that's the life for us. The kids are thriving. They enjoyed it. We understand they didn't go backwards in their education. We had a good time. Our work's happy. Let's continue doing that. Or it didn't work. Sure. And, you haven't given up your house for a year and got nowhere to live and whatever. So, I highly recommend people go and check out Working Without Borders with Sam Keller. I think he's doing some great work, and he's working with some other very intelligent people. A guy called Paul Bennett, he's also from the travel world. He's sailing around the world on his boat at the moment. The problem he had was education with his kids, so he's using all these smarts and technological knowledge to build a process that helps with remote learning, etc. So, there's a couple of people to go and check out. They're doing incredible things, and they're in the right spot at the right time. The world's definitely moving this way, and good luck to them because they're good people as well.
Of the places you've traveled to, do you have an overlooked travel location that you've been to that people should look into? I'm sure you have a few.
Look, the last one,
yeah,
I'm sure. The last one I went to blew my mind, actually. So I was a long time going there. I travelled through Central America, and I'd been to South America previously for a year also, but I'd never made it to Ecuador. Of course, everyone knows Galapagos. Yep. It doesn't need much introduction, but mainland Ecuador and Quito in particular, really, I had such a good time. I don't know whether it was the 2-year layoff of not being able to travel anywhere, or for me it was actually 3 years of not really getting out of the country and just being so excited to be back out there. But I don't think so. I think Quito is genuinely just an amazing city where it had a little bit of edge to it, but nothing scary, nobody ever approached me in any way that was anything but friendly. But it also had some great things that I wasn't expecting. It had an absolutely thriving craft beer scene with some of the best microbreweries that wouldn't be out of place in Melbourne or a city in the States, doing fantastic beer, very cool places. Had great restaurants. And I think if I was to pick up and go somewhere as a remote worker, it would be very, very high on my list as a place to hang out, because the weather's the same temperature every day. So you know what you're in for. It's in the mountains, in a beautiful valley. It's got everything you need. I'd go check it out if you've got the opportunity.
Perfect. So we're going to have this in our liner notes, airguides.com. How can people find you? Any more information about Airguides that we'll share? Because I know our listeners are always looking for interesting adventures, and adventure travel experience that's sustainable with folks that really have a great understanding of things. Share how people can take advantage of what you're offering and also catch up with you, and which I did on LinkedIn, by the way, which is always a great way to get to know people.
Totally. Always happy to make connections on LinkedIn. If you're a storyteller with a reasonable sized audience, please get in contact. We'd love to chat to you about how potentially we could connect you to the travel industry and help you earn a living out of it. Definitely interested in hearing from people from that perspective. But those that just want to have a look at we create our products based on our storytellers' experiences. So some of the stuff we've got up there at the moment is swimming with humpback whales, 7 days. Every day you go out on a boat. There's a place in Tonga where the humpbacks go and do their calving. So they've got their babies with them, and they just basically hang out in this bay for a number of months. They're incredibly curious animals, and so they come to you essentially. And there's just, at the moment, they haven't seen people for 3 years, and there's just there's hundreds of them. And you go out there on that particular experience with a underwater photographer who's the best in the business. So if that's something you're interested in, taking amazing photography, but having just the most incredible wildlife experience and supporting a country that not only had COVID, but they had an underwater volcano erupt on them, which basically decimated their country from a tourism point of view. They've been down and out for a long time, and we're very careful at Airguides to ensure that the money you spend with us, the absolute majority of it ends back with the local people who need the support. So, but we've got lots of different experiences there. If you're interested in food, we work with great chefs on trips around the world where they're imparting their knowledge and skills and what have you as part of the experience. So that's just a much deeper and richer experience than just kind of wandering yourself around by yourself or what the internet can tell you. But check us out, airguides.com. Love to come and have travel with us, or if you'd like to work with us, reach out to me. Happy to chat to people.
Perfect. Well, I appreciate you, Tony, sharing with us. Appreciate you traveling like this. The empathetic, the kind of getting out of the bubble. This is what we're all about. And, we'll put it this way, you're an early adopter in that, and people are catching up to that, some of the travel stories that we shared today. So to our audience, we really appreciate you listening to the new Nomad today. The way people find this podcast typically is word of mouth. So please, if you enjoy this, please pass along the new Nomad podcast for folks. Learned a very great deal today, and we hope that we'll continue to share travel stories with you in the future. Thank you, and we appreciate you joining us, and we appreciate Tony's time. Have a great trip. Cheers.
Insured Nomads proudly supports the new Nomad podcast. Insured Nomads, for the evolution of insurance, for the revolution of travel. For all your travel, medical, and support needs, please visit our website at insurednomads.com. We support our location-independent community worldwide.
Thanks for tuning in to the New Nomad podcast, where we bring together an incredible community of people and ideas that embody the nomadic spirit. Please remember to subscribe and leave a review. For more amazing tips to help you take advantage of the cross-border lifestyle, please visit us at insurednomads.com/podcast. See you next week.